What is going on, everyone? This is Dr. Josh Funk, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. What's going on, everybody? This is Dr. Funk with Dr. Baker, aka Uncle Baker, here for an awesome episode that hopefully will resonate with a lot of clinic owners, people in leadership, and or young professionals who are really looking to dive in, make their mark in the community, get involved outside of the four walls of the facility that they're at, and contribute to a much more transformational work environment as opposed to one that's solely transactional. And that's going to largely focus around community outreach, marketing, and connecting with what a large part of this is, your ideal client avatar. When I talk about building out a marketing plan that aligns with the company, that also puts individuals at the company in which they feel like they are seeing and working with individuals that they typically like to work with. A lot of that focuses on our strategy outside of the four walls. Yes, there's a ton of things online that you can do with regards to search engine optimization, a website, Google AdWords, social media, etc. But at the end of the day, there's no substitute for a handshake and a smile and truly providing people the gift of free 99 or the gift of free with information. Time in front of that individual, giving them free information, and ideally putting yourself in a situation where you've given them something without necessarily asking for something. So, Zach, I know I kind of laid that up for the audience here, but this has been something that we've been at for over 8 years now. I mean, I can think back to when we started out in Frederick. We knew that we wanted to work with a more active population base. That was something that largely aligned with our backgrounds. I think there's a certain motivational level that is much more enjoyable to work with and to support. What are some things that you think of right out of the gates when it comes to balancing community outreach and the marketing process with the company core values, and some things that you think that people should consider when building out their plan?
I think the first thing you have to realize is making sure that you're going to events that match up with what your company aligns with. And I think that's where, and we can go back to our early days when we were kind of doing, guerrilla marketing, just going everywhere and anywhere that we could. And I think now we're a little bit more targeted in regards to, we've identified communities that we either are deeply rooted within, we have connections in, or their company or organization matches our core values, our beliefs, and our philosophies. Or maybe it's a community that we don't have a connection with, and it's one that we've identified as being a potentially good partner and a good ally. So I think the best thing in making your most time at events is making sure you're at events that actually correlate with what your organization is aligned with, and a demographic of people that could potentially be walking through your doors and are appropriate for walking through your doors. And if you find the events I find myself kind of like twiddling my thumbs at and not really knowing what to do or who to talk to are the same ones where I'm at there and I'm like, God, this just doesn't seem like a great fit for what we are doing as a company. Or it's one where maybe it's just not geographically close to where we have a location, or it's a demographic where they may be seeking PT or rehab services, but it's not something that we offer or may be the best fit for them.
To provide a little bit more just context, talk about things that you have done yourself to see more of a clientele that you generally enjoy working with. Share a little bit of areas of the body, specific sports, and how that correlated with some of the efforts outside of the clinic.
Yeah. Speaking personally, ACL rehab and throwing athletes are two individual injuries that I find a lot of enjoyment working with, something that I've personally gone through myself, so I can empathize on that level. And one thing that I try to do is be a presence in the school systems. And a lot of the individuals that we have with these injuries are from the local public and private schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges. So anything that I can do to either show face at maybe fundraisers that those schools or organizations are doing. We're a heavy and recurring presence in the sports medicine classes at these schools where we go in for guest lectures. We developed an internship program at Rehab to Perform where we actually have Frederick County, Carroll County, Montgomery County, I want to say Howard and Anne Arundel. We have several local public school systems where these individuals can come in as part of their class day and their school credit and learn about physical therapy. And I don't think there's any better recruiting and marketing tool for showing your passion in a certain field than by sharing it with those individuals who are playing sports and interacting with those athletes on a day-to-day basis from a peer-to-peer standpoint. So I think oftentimes when we look at community involvement, community outreach, we kind of get a little bit tunnel vision on, that's putting a tent and a table at a 5K event or at a gym and offering free injury consults. And I think there's a variety of ways that you can share information and share resources with people outside of those more traditional means as well.
And when it comes to the events and your mindset behind what you would do at some of these events, we have evolved greatly over the years from a very, very basic table set up with no tablecloth and very, very few marketing materials to now a 20-foot trailer that rolls up at bigger events, hyper ice equipment, everything from the Normatec boots to massage guns to roll-up banners. What are some things that you think for somebody who's really just looking to kind of kick things off that they need to think about, not just the equipment, but also on a personal and physical level with regards to their actual efforts?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you need to focus on at these events is to have fun and meet people. And when you've got a row of vendors that a participant at one of these events is at, and they see 20 different tables and 20 different tents, and everybody's just kind of staring at that participant, hoping they come up to them, that's a little bit intimidating. It's not the most welcoming thing. But if they see somebody who is out in the crowd, they're mixing it up with people, they're talking, they're interacting, I think connecting on more of a personal level is what's going to then lead to some of your further professional conversations. So, for example, we were recently at the Bay Bridge 10K down in Annapolis, and yes, we had a recovery trailer there. We were doing some post-run recovery activities, but a lot of the first interactions was people just coming up and sharing their experience. How did the race go? What did your training look like? Is this the first time you've ever done it? You're genuinely involved in getting to know the person. And then, yes, we're a PT company. Once they realize that, then the conversation evolves later on into, oh gosh, you know what? I've had this foot issue, or I've had this back issue, or I have a family member that was looking for PT. And a lot of those conversations kind of go that way, where I think early on when I went to these events, that's what I was leading with. And I tried to go right into kind of more of the professional conversation with some of these participants, and it gets looked at as salesy and gimmicky and not as genuine. And I think the other thing that I've really figured out from going to these events is if they do end up coming through your doors as a patient, or they refer somebody through your doors as a patient, it's not your first interaction with them. And we know patient experience and patient outcomes are based off of how well do you interact with your healthcare provider. Do you trust them? Do you buy into them? Do you have a good rapport with them? And oftentimes your first session, your first couple weeks with that person is establishing that rapport. If you've already done that outside of the clinic, you are ahead of the game when they come in for that first interaction with them from a plan of care standpoint. And it's a comment that a lot of students have with me is, how a lot of your first interactions look a little bit more informal or a little bit more conversational than I would have thought. And I get to say, well, yeah, I met this person 3 weeks ago at this event, or I saw this person, I was working at a game and I met this person in the stands because their daughter or their son was playing as well. And it's like we've already known each other. So we can kind of cut to the chase a little bit quicker. So I think there's a lot of takeaways and a lot of almost like indirect value that comes from these interactions.
And as you're going through some of that play-by-play, I am thinking about a couple of younger clinicians at our company. And don't feel like you have to name names if you don't want to, but it becomes so much easier to have conversations with younger clinicians who are looking to make a name for themselves and to potentially command more value from a company standpoint, who are actively invested outside of the clinic. What are some things that you think, especially maybe when it comes to things like workshops, are important and just young clinicians overall should be considering when entering the workforce and wanting to put themselves in a position where they have a caseload that matches their ideal client avatar, as well as potentially put themselves in a situation where they're able to have easier conversations with leadership about the amount of value that they're bringing and potentially that leading to something monetary as well.
Yeah, and I think if you work at a company that does not already have a system or a process in place for going out into the community, doing workshops, doing seminars, that's a layup for you right there. Approach your employer, approach your colleagues. How can I get involved in this? I want to get our company in front of new people. You tell that to an owner, and their eyes are going to light up, and you're going to be somebody that's on their radar. The second thing that comes out of it is it's a relatively low-risk way for you to own the material for whatever you're going to go to present for them. Say you're doing a low back seminar for a CrossFit gym or a running community or a sports team. It's a way for you to prepare for it, really own that knowledge from a clinical standpoint, and grow professionally with your overall clinical skills. The second part of that is it is very easy and meaningful practice for how you can convey that message outside of a one-on-one patient interaction. And there is a lot of younger clinicians that I find they have a hard enough time finding their own voice in the clinic and finding what that communication flow looks like. Then they finally get it down and they don't realize, how can I translate this message to different communities and different populations? How may this message change to a group of 50 people compared to a group of 2 or 3? What am I doing if I'm talking to my colleague as opposed to a parent or a patient or a college athlete or a strength conditioning coach? So I think you get a lot of personal and professional development with regards to your overall knowledge of an individual piece of content or field. It also gives you tremendous amount of practice showing your expertise and communicating that to different populations, which is indefinitely going to translate into patient care as well. Then when you start to show that you know a topic and you're fun to engage with and you're fun to interact with, guess what your schedule starts to look like? People that you've went out and made connections with who are finding their way into the clinic, or they are spreading your name word of mouth that you're the person to go to. And I can think of several people at the locations I personally work with and other ones within our company where there's certain individuals where their schedule is skewed towards a certain demographic or patient caseload. And it is not a surprise that that's the same demographic and organizations that they are spending time outside of office hours making connections with. And you know, is it a direct cause and effect where you go out and you spend an hour of time and you immediately get 2 people coming in on your schedule? No. But there's an extreme correlation between where you allocate efforts and time and what your patient caseload starts to look like. And that just leads to more career fulfillment. It leads to a more enjoyable day. And I think we talk about burnout a lot of times. We focus so much on, patient volume or the, how many people or what you're doing during the day. I think a lot of times it comes down to boredom, and you're just not doing stuff that you enjoy. And I remember, probably 5 summers ago now, back when we had like 2 or 3 clinics, Germantown was just opening up. I was seeing a good number of people on a day-to-day basis, but it's because I was squeezing them into my schedule to find more time for them. And I was seeing upwards of 13, 14, 15 ACL patients every single day. And it was to the point where we became the ACL clinic. And I, at that time, was one of the more visible people in the company, making it known that I liked working with ACLs. And I wasn't the only person, but they tended to make their way onto my schedule just either through word of mouth or familiarity. And I loved it. It was some of my busiest times. You go back and look at the numbers. It was by far my most, quote unquote, productive times in regards to just the amount of patients I was seeing. But from a day-to-day satisfaction with patient care, they were some of my most enjoyable times, because every day I was walking in and seeing 13 to 15 people, ages 12 to 25, youth, high school, collegiate athletes, that were all ACLs, which I loved working with. And I think that had a direct effect on just my overall enjoyment level of going to work. And I think that resonates just from a company culture, a vibe, and just kind of leading by example of if one person can make this happen, then that's kind of a prototype or a blueprint that others can follow to then make their schedule look the same.
So you're telling me if I spend a little bit more time out of the clinic in an environment that I really don't dislike, just deliver value, communicate things that probably come really, really easy to me, I might end up actually not feeling like I'm working as much.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that equation works, but I think that's exactly how it works. And I don't want this to be misinterpreted as, you go to work, you leave work, and then you are just running ragged around town trying to show up in every gym and every sports organization. Find ones that are organic fits. So I can think of like people in our company, one of our individuals at our Frederick location enjoys working with concussions, enjoys working with the mixed martial arts community. He already trains at a mixed martial arts gym. He's already there 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, and he does more professional-oriented seminars and community outreach for them, but it's at a place he's already spending time at. So it's not really going out of his way to make that connection. We have the same thing with multiple members in our company at different locations who do the same thing at CrossFit gyms or at F45 or at Orange Theory and other organizations that they're already members at, they already have connections. So I think a lot of times we think we need to reinvent the wheel when often it's just kind of right under our nose. And I'm spoiled because I've got 3 kids that are heavily involved in the local youth sports organizations. And that's where I find a lot of my networking and marketing and just community interaction is at practices and games and tournaments that I'm already going to be at anyways. And all I got to do is just talk shop while I'm there.
Just to wrap this up, I want anybody who's listening to this who has a leadership role in a company to think about the word retention when it comes to building out what you're doing from a community outreach standpoint. I genuinely think that individuals that are more connected outside of the 4 walls end up seeing a caseload that they genuinely enjoy more and are also going to be in a situation where work-life balance, workplace happiness are going to be things that are non-issues moving forward. You have to make sure that you're getting feedback from them, learning about what they like to do, learning where they like to spend their free time, learning what an ideal caseload might look for them. And then maybe you have to do the work to kind of figure out, again, that ICA. Where is that ideal client avatar? Where can you kind of gently nudge them in the community to better connect them? Because sometimes people come from far away to work at your clinic. But you're going to put yourself in a situation where you have a much more engaged and aligned staff. And I do think that the big R word that a lot of people are struggling with right now, retention, are going to have less and less issues. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned people in leadership roles or PTs who may be earlier in their career or they're just at a point in their career where they want to take on more leadership roles. You need to show that you can own and manage your own schedule in a productive and meaningful way before you can be trusted or asked to do things that involve managing other people and their schedules and their efforts in and around the clinic. So I think I look at it almost, you always call it like entrepreneurship, and I always think of it as this is kind of your little test for people in our company who are asking for more, where it's like, go for it. What are you passionate about? Show me that you can own that community, master your schedule, and do a really good job of just building your own personal brand. Then we'll talk about taking that on a little bit bigger picture. But show you can manage your own schedule, then we'll start talking about managing other responsibilities as well.
And just a final thing to think about. It becomes so much easier, again, for you to communicate value, especially at these end-of-the-year moments where you're having a conversation with leadership and showing that the referral report or the people that are on your schedule are actually more generated by you than the company that you're working for. You make yourself much more irreplaceable and much more valuable in a situation where your schedule starts to become as a result of your efforts, especially when talking about the relationship between value and money. This topic today was generated by feedback from you, the audience. So if you want to see a particular topic, please reach out to either Zach, myself. I know we put out asks on social media or in the newsletter, but the more that we hear from you, the more that we're going to speak directly to you. Otherwise, thanks for listening to another episode of the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or have been tuned in for multiple episodes, we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for listening.